Elizabeth Debicki plays Princess Diana for the last two seasons of The Crown. I'm Matt Noble of Gold Derby. Elizabeth, I wanted to start off by asking, what was the biggest challenge for you in approaching this character?
Ooh, there were many for me. Probably the biggest challenge was getting out of my own head and giving myself space to work like I would usually work as an actor, and giving myself kind of creative license. And that took me a really long time to like get over the threshold of feeling like there was really a right or a wrong way to play this character. So maybe that, I now have, it's been a while since I played that character. So I now have some kind of uh, retrospective kind of focus on it. So I'd say that was probably the biggest challenge in a way.
What for you is the biggest joy in playing Diana?
Uh, so many things about playing this role gave me so much joy. I miss it actually, and I really, really loved playing this part. And I think by the time I got to season 6, I'd been doing it for long enough that I really was sort of starting to trust myself. And I loved the scenes. I love what was given to us as actors to play. I loved working with Khaled, and I loved working so much with all the boys who played my kids. I loved it was just it's hard to explain, but being inside that part, it just filled me up with so much kind of, it was just a very like alive place, very kind of like alive and reactive, and there's just so much joy in that person and such an attempt to connect all the time. I think it just gave me license to tap into that in myself, which is not something that I maybe do enough as a person. And so I just loved that feeling of really just really connecting with people. And yeah, I mean, the part of the joy of this show is that every single person who comes in to work with you are such wonderful actors, really accomplished performers. And it's so difficult. I've done this so much in my life where you come in and you only have like 4 scenes or whatever it is. And so a lot is riding on you, or you put a lot of pressure on yourself to kind of bring your A game to those scenes. And those people really did that every time. So I just got to like revolve around all these amazing actors, and it was just the best. It was such a great job. I loved it so much.
Yeah, when you've got a caliber of actors, a caliber of actor that is so high, like how does that work in terms of you looking to bring out the best in them and them looking to bring out the best of you and sort of that service of each other?
Acting, you always want to be acting with people who are better than you, who challenge you, and who you really want to be able to meet them, um, it, at the level they're working at. And I think with the Crown too, it's kind of unique because we take the roles over from other actors before us who play the parts so beautifully. So it's in that way, it's like this baton pass feels very kind of sacred, and you put a lot of pressure on yourself. But every time, I only have in the whole of the time that I shot The Crown, I think I have 2 scenes with Imelda. I think that might be right. 2 scenes with Imelda, and God, I loved the scene I had with her. It was just like Christmas for me to just go to work and have this amazing actor to work opposite who was so like settled and living in this character by that point. And Dom, I just think is astonishingly talented. I've always loved his work. I've always watched his career, and he really just like pulls this stuff out. Like it's amazing. He literally is like looking at the sides going, "Oh, what's this scene? What's this scene?" And then this amazing, which by the end of it, I was like, "This is a ruse. You so you know exactly what your line is. You can't just be pulling that out of nowhere." But yeah, it makes you better, and it makes you ambitious, and it makes you, yeah, it makes you work hard. But you also get to relax in this place knowing that the work is always just going to flow with people who are working really hard as well. So it's lovely.
Yeah. And everyone on The Crown almost is playing a real life figure, someone that sort of we got some awareness of, or some like there's some historical record of. But Princess Di, maybe the Queen as well, but like Princess Di is the one that probably people have the most preloaded conceptions of who they
Right.
are and just like their level, her level of fame, and all right. So how did you like want to approach that in terms of like playing someone that people have a lot of strong opinions on and bringing either something new to it or trying to, yeah, how do you approach that?
Um, I mean, to be honest with you, it was really difficult. That was kind of what I was talking about before. It's, I had I had to acknowledge that. I had to kind of learn what those preconceived, I had to kind of learn about the real life person this character is based on. I really didn't know very much. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but I feel like we're a very similar age and we both grew up in Australia. And it's like my knowledge was this like very slim imprint that from my childhood. And then this kind of vague understanding of that once this person lived and they are so beloved and they did so much in their lifetime for people and they made such an impression. And so I learned a lot. I kind of had to learn what those preconceptions were, and then I had to kind of like embed them into myself, and then I had to discard them in a funny way. It was a really unique process, really challenging, a kind of a lot of like mental gymnastics in the beginning about the doubt. I was riddled with a lot of doubt that I wouldn't be able to get close to it. But I think that only really went away once I started working. When I started, at the beginning when I would shoot a scene, I almost felt like I wanted to look up and sort of look around at the crew, like, is it actually working, or do you all think this is terrible? Or I've never really felt that sense of like needing external to be externally approved as much as I did. Usually I just sort of look up at my director and I want to know if it's working. But so it was unique in that way. I had to do a lot of lot of searching in myself to have the confidence to sort of just go for it, I guess. Also, I think with The Crown, people bring so much, and I knew this because I watched this show long before I knew I was going to be in it. I watched this show, and I did what everybody does. I watched it and went, "Oh my god!" And then I Wikipedia'd it
Yeah.
because that's terrible, but that's what we all do. And so I understood, and I also understood that I brought a lot of my own preconceived ideas to these people, and that in a funny way, as an actor, you almost have to like make room for those to exist too. I sort of think that's what Peter does with the writing as well, but as an actor, yeah, you have to kind of make space for people to bring their own memory to it. It's really unlike anything I've done before. I can't imagine. I think unless I ever played another incredibly famous person again, um, I can't imagine anything will have this many layers to it for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and like like from my childhood, the death of Princess Di is one of the few sort of news events I remember. Like, like I remember where I was and like how it impacted, people, and it seemed like, oh,
Yeah.
I was pretty young at the time, but I'm like, oh, this is a big deal. Like, this is like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
The Crown is such a like beautiful show in terms of I feel like really thematically linking characters and ideas and stories. What do you think was like, I don't know, the theme of Princess Diana from the way she was portrayed in your two seasons?
Yeah, because it is quite different to Emma's season, and we've spoken about this before. It's almost like it's three different acts of somebody's life. In season 5, I think the themes were really, if we're going to break them down, I think they were about um, they were about a desire to control the narrative of your own life. So I guess they were about autonomy. They were about systems and kind of how is it possible to survive, like soul intact in a system that you are not born into, and I think there was themes about definitely about isolation and the sort of like cost of loneliness. Obviously, motherhood is a kind of theme across all of them, um, all three of the Diana featuring seasons. The media, the kind of like media, what the media can do to somebody's life, and the kind of, you know, the dance between it being helpful and kind of intolerable. Um, and then I think like maybe the biggest one is really just, and maybe this sounds way too vague, but it's sort of about love, like the need for it and what happens when you don't have it in the way that when it's not reciprocated in the way that you need it to be, what happens to a person and how they maneuver through their life in order to find that, because that's sort of the thing that felt like it was driving my Diana a lot of the time.
Yeah. Did you learn anything through playing her?
Yeah, I learnt a lot actually about myself, and which is not it's not uncommon. I think I often fall into in my work, it's always really interesting to me. Sometimes when I take a job or something, I get a job through an audition or whatever, can be very clear to me that the themes that are involved in it that are I really consciously want to explore. And then sometimes retrospectively, years later, I look at a job and I think, oh, that's so funny that I did that at that time in my life, because it was a conversation I was having with myself. And then I made this film where I got to sort of explore that. Um, so yeah, I learned a lot about I don't I'm not paying you by the hour, so we're not gonna go too deeply into anything, but I think that it's, in terms of, like, how you prioritize your life and what you really have at the end of the day, and it's always people. It's just all you have is people, the people in your life, and they deserve you and the best of you as much as you can give them, and you have to make space and time for that, and I think that, that was a really important thing for me to, like, explore in the role, um, through somebody who automatically did that, I was playing someone who just was doing that, and, yeah, there was such a I think when I was talking about why I really loved playing the part, there was just such a kind of energy and a real kind of open-heartedness that I had to access and really enjoyed being in. I think maybe that taught me some things too. Yeah. It was like a beautifully for me, it felt I felt like I had so much room through Peter's kind of exploration of the character to just explore lots of, like, human yeah, very human, like, a lot of error, and there's mistakes, and there's forgiveness, and there's all the things that actors really wanna explore. It was kind of all in there, which it was yeah, which made it such a great part.
Yeah. And like, congratulations, Elizabeth, on your Emmy nomination for the role. The episode you've submitted is, I believe, Dis-Moi Oui. I hope I pronounced that okay. I'm horrible with French pronunciation. Um, what was special about that episode for you?
It's the kind of culmination of the season 6 kind of the other 2 episodes. I think the work that I got to do in it alongside Khaled was just really special to us both to be able to kind of work through those scenes, work together on them. Um, yeah, I mean, obviously, like the story, the where the story goes in that episode is an interpretation of a completely tragic um, event that was real. And someone once said to me, a writer once said to me, "Don't you think the definition of tragedy is that when you look back, you see the things that could be avoided and they weren't?" And I carried that with me a lot while I was making that. episode, it was a real twisting kind of episode to make because we had to sort of, and we did our best to tread really lightly through it. But we were also very aware of what the imagery was to recreate some of it and what it would mean. And yeah, so it was we carried that in ourselves for quite a while, and it was difficult. But we really wanted, Khaled and I, we really cared deeply about making sure that there was, in our interpretation of this, that there was kind of moments of like grace.
Talking a bit about grace, is grace, like, also an important thing as an actor to have grace?
It would be helpful
Yeah.
if one could embody it
Yeah.
frequently. It's not the easiest place to live in, and I think you can have the intention to live there. Perhaps it's easier as an actor, to have to sort of, I don't know, when you're kind of really when you're really happily working on something, there is this kind of feeling of like ease, or there can be a lot of space there, and that is kind of like the sweet spot that I think I am looking for all the time. And I find it more regularly at work than I do in real life, I think, which maybe that's because I really like my job.
Yeah.
But and also real life, you can sort of wake up and do your meditation and think, I'm going to be in a state of grace. And then you walk downstairs and you haven't done the dishes from last night, and grace just evaporates. And, that's just human. But, and then you claw it back after you've done the dishes. But, I think when you're acting, it's like you can create these sort of bubbles to live in. And because they're not real, maybe you can invite things in more intentionally. I'm not sure.
And for, I guess, grace, you need generosity too, and I imagine that's something as an actor that, like, is helpful when you bring generosity to your performances and to the people you're working with. Um,
Yeah. And
Generosity.
I have to say the cast, the cast of this show are very, very generous actors. They're hugely generous actors, and yeah, I've been really, really lucky in my career to work with so many people who like generosity in the scene work, and then just as a human being, where they support you and they understand where you're at, or and that goes for like the heads of department on this show as well. It was a long journey we were on, and people needed to have give each other space and like support each other through difficult chunks of it, and yeah.
Yeah. In that, in her one of Diana's final scenes in the series, she says sort of the story of her whole life is dashing around and sort of losing herself. Can that also be a problem? Like, have you ever encountered that problem as an actor, like trying, like, sort of getting caught up in the busyness of something, you sort of lose what's important, or that's a danger at least?
Yeah, it's like a multi-layered like that danger exists on so many different layers.
Yeah.
It can exist just because you're sort of like brushing your teeth, and then you're trying to eat your breakfast and brush your teeth and put your mic on, and then you kind of like tumble into work, and if you don't take a moment to kind of check yourself, you know, TV and films now, it's sort of like, I don't know the difference between how many pages TV shoots and film shoots a day because people work so similarly now. But yeah, you shoot a lot of material every day. It's like you gotta take moments of grace. But yeah, I think things can move really fast and you're not aware of them. Or I think one of the dangers as an actor too is that when you're not working, it's going to sound really dramatic, but you kind of cease to exist. I used to feel this a lot in my 20s when I wasn't working. I just sort of feel really suspended. And it was only when I got another job I think, "Oh, there I'm going there. There's the light." Like a moth, you just go, "Well, great. There I'm flying to Tokyo." But when you're not working, so you have to kind of learn how to not do that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to quickly end on, when you won the SAG award for this role, and that's a great category because you're up, it's lead, supporting, all piled in on the same category, and you're able to win there. And when you won, you talked about a role you had when you were in year 5 or 5th grade, and that you were, like, so excited to get this role, and it's just a little small play that a parent wrote that you sort of levitated home, and that and you said that hasn't gone away. Um,
Yeah.
so just quickly, what about performing and acting gives you joy? That kind of joy?
I don't even know if I can really, like, distill it down to something. It's just what I always really love doing, and you can't do it unless someone gives you the job. You can't practice it on your own. Um, and so you wait for that opportunity when someone either sees you in a certain way or they cast you in a certain thing, then you get to kind of, like, expand back into that place that makes you really happy. I think a lot of actors feel like this, you feel, yeah, you feel really, I don't know. It's just it's such a like, I don't know, just to be able to do it, to be able to do it for work feels to me, honestly, like, really frequently extremely lucky to be able to do that. So, yeah, but why it makes me so happy? I think it's just, like, perpetually interesting. I feel like I've never really figured out how to do it, and I like to try and figure it out, and it shifts all the time. Like, what you have to do in each job is a different kind of challenge, and actually you just meet new people and you're in a new place, and I think that must be good for my brain. I've never broken it down too much, but I think the kind of constant changing of it, it just suits me. So, yeah, and it's fun, and actors are kind of like wonderful, strange, great people, and directors too, and crews are like little families. I mean, it's nice to work. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, all the best of luck with the Emmy Awards, Elizabeth. Hopefully, how cool would that be to win the Emmy? That'd be awesome. Uh, yeah, and people who love Emmy Awards and awards can go to goldderby.com to follow the award races and join the discussion. And just Elizabeth, thanks so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for getting up so early in the morning.